Good evening. Now, I just realized I said good evening, but hello, wherever you're watching this from. So welcome to the Whale Talk podcast. This month, we're going to be talking about the large oil spill in human history. We're going to be hearing from Geophyts about some shark tooth adventures. And we're also going to be learning about northern bottlenose whales and how you can help protect them against whaling. I'm Cravone. And joining me, as ever, is a man who lives in a place where it's probably a different weather on one side of the house to the other. It's Geofits 4.
Good morning, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Figured I'd go with the Truman greeting there after
You
he went
have
with
to.
good evening.
You have to. I mean, I set that up so well. Okay, so do you want to learn some whale facts?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So, did you know baleen whales don't brush their teeth? This could be for various reasons, including lack of hands, lack of toothbrush, and lack of teeth.
Neat and fun fact. We'll have another fun fact about baleen whales in a little bit later.
Yeah, and like two like well facts later.
Oh no, it's a little further than that. We'll get there.
Are you gonna surprise? You're gonna surprise me with something.
Yeah, surprise whale fact.
You're gonna surprise me with something. Okay, second whale fact. No whale has ever been to space. I mean, why would
Only
they?
in Star Trek.
I was about to protest that, but then I remember that all dolphins are whales, which means belugas are whales. And
Hmm.
that's a good way. That's a good way for us to plug our new T-shirt, our new merch. This is a whale T-shirt, and yes, it's a dolphin, but it's also a whale. So we've got that in our merch store.
Because all
Uh,
dolphins are whales, but not all whales are dolphins.
I messed that up the other day.
Oh no.
I said all whales are dolphins, but not all dolphins are whales. Did you know all sharks are fish, but not all fish are sharks?
Mm.
Hey, that's our shark content. For those that like shark. But actually, you know what? We don't even need content for those that like
Yeah,
shark this week. We're gonna have some of that.
yeah, this is actually gonna be shark content month, at least
Gonna
a little
probably be more
bit.
shark content than whale content, actually.
There'll be some whales mixed in.
So, our last whale fact: blue whales think you look small.
Yeah, it's probably true.
It's probably true, yeah.
I mean, what's the size of a blue whale's eye? Like, isn't it like like massively big?
It's I think it's like the size of your head.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I
I
I, I
wouldn't be
thought
surprised
you
if it was bigger.
it might be bigger.
Yeah,
What's what do you think's bigger, a blue whale's eye or a blue whale's throat?
probably the throat.
That's because the throat I think is the size of a basketball, or at
Yeah,
least
I
the
mean, I could see the
diameter.
eyeball being, but I could see the eyeball being that big, especially with how massive a blue whale is, and they got to see and stuff. Yeah.
I can see, yeah. Okay, so I we're gonna let Geo go off here because Geo was doing some exploring for
Yeah.
particular artifacts. I feel like you're about to surprise me and say you found a baleen plate.
No, I wish that would be really really cool,
That would be
but
cool.
But yeah, over the last couple few months, I've gotten a lot more interested in minerals and fossils, and like the treasure hunt, of being able to go out in the field and hunt for those things. And being that I'm in Florida, we really don't have a whole lot of like rock hounding, opportunities, because a lot of the really cool rocks and rock specimens are much more associated with volcanic and hydrothermal and like movement happening a lot more in the rock. And that's not really what Florida's geology is like. So we can kind of take a step back for a second and look a little bit at the geology of Florida. And Cravone, if you would like to bring up the image for me. So Florida is on top of what's called the Florida Platform, and it's basically a large plateau on the southeastern corner of the North American plate. Um, if you go and look at any of the satellite pictures or like the Google Maps, pictures of the Gulf of Mexico, you'll notice that coming out from the west side of Florida, there's this large flat area that goes out miles and miles, 100 miles plus, offshore before it drops down really deep. And so this whole platform is big sedimentary rock formation that started lifting up from the sea during, I believe it was the Jurassic period. I believe it was the Jurassic period. I might be a little bit off on that, but um, so it formed this shallow sea for a long time. So you have a lot of fossil accumulation, from sea, from crustaceans, seashells, and whatnot. But eventually you end up starting to get during the early Miocene, which about 30 million years ago, you start to get what's called Orange Island raising up out of the sea, starting from the north end of what we see here, and then spreading out. And this ended up forming an environment where megalodon sharks, which are some of the largest sharks known, though an extinct species, you would come to this part of what the early form of the Gulf of Mexico, and it was a nursery. So this is where they would give birth to their young, and they would grow up when they were smaller, oftentimes feeding on things like dugongs and other small whales and fish and cephalopods and whatever else. And so that led to around Orange Island having some large deposits of fossils, particularly marine fossils, but also shark's teeth, not just from megalodons, but from a wide variety of other sharks. And then on our map here, if you look at the green island where the straight line is along the west, and then it takes that little curve to the east, that little section right in there was a shallow area called Hillsborough Lagoon, and now is called the Bone Valley, and it is a phosphate heavy region that's been mined heavily for phosphate, which is then turned into fertilizer. And this is a region that has generally fed the world over the last 100 years through that fertilizer creation. But in all of that, creation was all of these fossils. So we have down here a few different places that we can go and hunt for fossils. Uh, Along Venice Beach in Southwest Florida, in particular, is known as very popular and famous place. They actually have a shark tooth festival every spring, where all you have to do is just go down to the beach and go into the surf and sift through the sand, and you'll find shark's teeth, and you'll find other fossils like mouthpieces, or sorry, mouth plate pieces from rays, the mouth plates from pufferfish. You can sometimes find fish or shark vertebrae that have fossilized. But one of the really cool things that people do find here pretty regularly is dugong ribs. And that is like one of my like dream finds. Is I would love to find a dugong rib with a shark tooth embedded in it. Like that would be just such a rare find, first off, but it would be so cool because like I said, in this area, these megalodons were, you know, feeding on, these smaller ones were feeding on, you know, dugongs and other whales. And megalodon was actually well suited feeding on large cetaceans. And what's interesting, we'll get into our whale fact here. Around the time that the megalodon went extinct was during a time when the ocean water started to cool. We started getting into the ice ages. The baleen whales started to move further north, more into polar regions, and the megalodons are much more of a tropical, warm water shark. And like these are very large sharks. Like we're talking, 50 to 70, feet, feet long sharks. But what's interesting is that when the megalodons died out, and these were a worldwide population, when they died out and went extinct, you then saw a trend towards gigantism in baleen whales as one of their largest predators died out and was no longer predating on them, allowing them to grow even bigger. So one of the other cool places that we can get into is the Peace River, which is a river that flows through the Bone Valley Formation. And I was got to go out last weekend for a little bit. I had a lot of fun. It's great just getting out into nature and finding what treasures. And when I was out there, I found some nice bull shark teeth, some lemon sharks, sand tigers. Um, Also found a lot of pieces of like turtle shell, because one of the other cool things about this, Orange Island, and then as it grew further north and connected, is that you had a lot of land mammals that inhabited that area, including mega sloths and like this large armadillo that was about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. Um, and so you can also find those kind of fossils in here too. So just been a really neat, learning a bit more about the geology here, because there's only certain places that the Bone Valley Formation, is exposed, and those are really the main place that we find shark's teeth in Florida. But there are a few other places, because you can go up to Amelia Island and Jacksonville in the Northwest, and going up through the Carolinas as well is also a very well known locality for finding shark's teeth. There's also a few places in the Panhandle where you can where they cut through formations where you can find fossils. So definitely one of those things of, if you are like, you don't even need to be near the ocean. Look around for in your area. You may actually find a place where you could go into a river and you could find megalodon teeth, because they were, like I said, a worldwide population. And these seas, or what is land now was not always land. Anywhere where there was a sea, between 5 and 30 million years ago, you could find megalodon teeth, and maybe you could even find dugong bones.
So how do you find these then? Like, do you have to dig for them?
Yeah, so generally we're digging. You can find some places where you can dig on land, and obviously with that you're talking about a lot of heavy equipment, because you're generally having to dig fairly deep down. But you can also go into some of the rivers, like the Peace River being one of the famous ones, where you can go out onto the beaches, like Venice Beach, Minnesota Beach, and for the beach, typically you like going out at low tide, because you have basically the formation is exposed on the seafloor about a mile and a half offshore, in about 15 to 30 foot of water. So some people will scuba dive and hunt around on the seafloor out there. But meanwhile, there's shark's teeth that are just getting, pushed up onto the beach, over time. Like anytime after a storm is really good, because it stirs things up and gets things moving around. In the river, you're looking for, places where, heavier things concentrate, and like gravels, and so typically you're going to be using these, like rakes with holes in them, like they're sand flea rakes that have been modified to to the purpose, and like sifters. And you're going to be going through through the gravels to try and find these. And they could be washed down from miles away. They could have been washed down from 3 yards away. You never know, especially when you get back into these little creeks that go off the river. You really never know what you'll find. And we actually have the water levels are actually really really low right now, because we've been in a little bit of a drought and the rains haven't started up. And that's actually allowed access to some parts of the river that, are normally too deep. And most people don't dive in the Peace River because they don't really want to deal with getting face to face with an alligator. Um, but with these new spots opening up, I saw one company that found this absolutely massive mastodon tooth, a molar, I think. And it's like big. It's bigger. It's like as big as a basketball or bigger. Like absolutely wild stuff. And it's just one of those things too of like I never realized how much fossilized material was around me here in Florida. And sometimes you just never know until you search because you never know what kind of geological processes happened around you in the past.
So by mastodon you mean like the elephants, right?
Yeah. So there's mastodons and there's woolly mammoths, both of which existed in Florida, and you can find teeth and bones from both in
That's
the
pretty
fossil
cool.
layers in Florida. Yeah.
So what would you say is the best, like the crowning achievement of what you found so far?
Um, Honestly, really nothing that's really notable. My last trip out, I got a couple of firsts. Like I got a fossilized gar scale, fossilized uh, fish vertebrae, just like maybe 2 centimeters across, if that, or not even that, probably a centimeter across. I also found a fairly large bull shark um, tooth, but really nothing spectacular at this point. Like to me, it's cool because it's all new and it's fun. I'm sure some of it will, become a little more boring, as I keep doing this. But I wouldn't say I've found anything that's really amazing or special to this point. But what I'm really hoping for is I'd love to find some dugong ribs. That's really high on the list. And I'd also love to find, some, megalodon teeth. Like finding anything over 5 inches would be absolutely amazing. 7 inches plus is the holy grail.
Hmm. I guess it's kind of like shore-based whale watching, where like the first few times you go, you see a
Mhm.
seal in the water, like you see like a harbor porpoise, for instance. Like you'll be happy that you saw those, but like after months of going, you're going to be like, well, I'm going for the one time that I'm going to see something big.
Yeah. And that is just like it's almost like collecting, right? That the more you get into something, the more you experience, the more you have to narrow, like
Yeah,
because you think about it like a triangle, right? There when you're at the bottom, like everything's new. You're experiencing all sorts of new stuff, but as you keep, experiencing new stuff, it's going to get narrower and narrower and harder for you to find those new experiences.
yeah, absolutely. So, do you have anything more to add on your
Uh,
sharking, your shark tooth thing?
Not really on that. Just been having a good time with it. It's been fun getting out into nature.
I guess when it's good weather as well, that definitely helps.
Yeah, like come July and August, I'll probably be staying in.
The dreaded Florida super summer. Can we can,
Yeah,
we- can
well,
we call it that?
yeah, well, and also once the rains start, the Peace River level is going to come up, and it's not going to be as good going out there.
Yeah.
So I have to wait for winter and the river to drop again.
I guess the advantage is like maybe not so much in rivers, although rivers I guess like there's a chance you see manatees, but I guess if you're on the shore, I mean there is every chance that you see dolphins, which I think you have seen dolphins, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, actually there was on Easter Sunday in the morning I was out and I was in like chest deep of water and I had a dolphin a couple dolphins were feeding and I had one that came and surfaced I don't know, maybe 10 meters in front of me at most. That was really
That's
cool. I wish I had a GoPro on.
that's pretty cool. That's actually really really close. For anyone that doesn't realize how close that is. Um,
Yeah.
that's crazy. So we're gonna talk about a. Okay, so we're gonna talk about a subject here today, and it's kind of an important subject. It's something that happened 16 years ago, and the reason why we're bringing it up now is because of like recent news regarding the Gulf of Mexico, and we we don't want to get political here, but we think that it's a good idea to sometimes like remind people why certain things. We're talking about the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and it's important to remind people why like certain things are like banned, for instance, like oil drilling, and just to say like what happened last time it was allowed. So we're going to talk about the Deepwater Horizon. So what was the Deepwater Horizon? It was a an offshore oil drilling rig that was in the Gulf of Mexico, and this this was a rig that was drilling the deepest oil field known in the world at the time, and it was in service from 2001 to 2010, and it was now this was based on the start of the lease because this was a platform leased by the South Koreans to British Petroleum, aka BP, and they were drilling the deepest oil well in the world in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, on the on April the 20th in 2010, the drill released a large amount of gas which spewed seawater, and this caused an explosion because some of the gas was methane. And methane, if you don't know, methane is not just flammable but also explosive. So this caused a big explosion, killing 11 people on the oil rig. Now, I think it's important here to mention that when we look at like disasters in human history, quite often there's some times where it's like human negligence. I think a good example of this is Chernobyl, where it was an experiment that went wrong and some human negligence that caused one of the biggest disasters in human history. But with the Deepwater Horizon, this was not an experiment gone wrong. This is not negligence. This was something that came about due to this oil rig doing the purpose for which it was built, and this was a natural process that was as a result of that caused this explosion. So it's basically like there is nothing that could have stopped this from happening except for not drilling in the first place. Now, the fireball was so large and located so remotely that fire crews were unable to control the blaze at all, and the rig eventually sank after 2 days. Now, the oil prevention mechanism, which was basically a giant plug, was not big enough to plug the hole in the seafloor. And what resulted from this was the largest oil spill in human history. The spill continued from the 20th of April to July the 15th of that year. And in that time, 171 million gallons of oil spilled into the sea. Now, to put this in perspective, we talk quite a bit about the rice whales on this podcast, mostly because that's Geo's local cetacean species, or local big cetacean species. So we're a big supporter of rice whales. Go rice whales. And so rice whales only live in the Gulf of Mexico. And 48% of their habitat was affected by this oil spill. And this caused their population decline by 22%. There are now about 30 to 40 individuals left of the species, and that's in the world. They only live in the Gulf of Mexico, and this had a devastating effect on them. And what's more is that it could still be affecting them now because what oil does from oil spills, what this does to endanger cetacean lives, is not just to endanger their lives, not even just to like cause them to have respiratory problems. This also attacks the reproductive systems. So this may actually make it impossible for certain individuals to have offspring. Now we have seen this with a population of big orcas up off the coast of Alaska, called the Chugach population, and they are functioning extinct. Even though they've still got males, they've still got females. All the females are past breeding age at this point, and they have not had a birth in that population since 1990. And this is because they were affected by a pretty devastating oil spill with a ship called the Exxon Valdez. Now back to Deepwater Horizon. Uh, so the result caused over 5,000 marine mammals to have been presumed killed by it. Over 1 million seabirds. That is a big number. Over 1,000 sea turtles died, and the sea turtle strandings figures increased tenfold after that. Now, this is a very common topic between us, and because this is something I really experienced at the time, and Geofit actually lived. Well, Geofit lives in the state that was the closest to this. So,
Well,
um,
then Louisiana, it was Louisiana was the closest, but yeah, I mean, the thing about the Gulf of Mexico, and we kind of, talked about it a little bit, with the Florida platform is, the Gulf of Mexico is basically a big giant bathtub. You really only have the one outlet, by the Yucatan or between the Yucatan and Cuba, and then the Florida Straits between the Florida Keys and Cuba. That's your only outlet, and you do have the Gulf Stream, that zips by there, but you know you have because you have kind of a barrier with the Gulf Stream zipping past the that border basically. A lot of that oil has remained in the Gulf, and I believe there's still been reports of basically spheres of oil that are found down in the deep depths you know of of the Gulf of Mexico still. But yeah, we had, I was in in my mid 20s at the time, and I was much more about going to the comic store and playing games than going outside. So I think I saw the effects a little less directly, but we certainly saw a big effect on tourism. That people canceled trips, and I mean that's April is you know we're kind of getting towards the end of our busiest season, around when that started. But then you get another little pickup in the middle of the summer, with summer vacations, and we had a lot of that get canceled. Restaurants especially hurt, and didn't survive through that. Um, but another like you didn't include it in your stats here, but you think about how many millions of pounds of fish and shrimp and oysters and clams and crustaceans that, were contaminated and affected, and their populations were affected, in the Gulf of Mexico, and
Well,
that we're probably still feeling the shockwaves of those population shocks now.
one other thing that I didn't mention either, which I did read but I didn't put in my notes, was actually the economic costs as well. Uh,
Oh yeah.
the Mexican fishing industry reportedly lost $250 million worth of revenue. That's just one industry, and
Hmm.
I believe the total cost, like
Hmm.
to the US, is somewhere in the region of $150 billion.
I would fully believe that, because you got to think about, okay, so that, like, there's two particular extremely important fisheries that I could think of out of the Gulf of Mexico. One of them being red snapper. That's a huge, huge fishery all the way from Texas down to down here to Florida. And then shrimp, being the other one. Like, if you've ever seen Forrest Gump, and he goes out and he does Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, same kind of thing. The shrimping up there, in the northern Gulf is a big deal, you know, and but also, the effects to, charter fishermen, fishing guides, you know um we had a lot of game fish like snook and sea trout and redfish that were impacted, and some of those are long lived, species, especially like redfish is a good example, because the females are the large, well, and snook as well. The females are the large, members of the species, because technically they're, I don't remember exactly with redfish, but I know with snook, they actually are born male, and then once they reach a certain size, they stop growing, and then the population, kind of like balances itself, and so some will switch sex and will grow, and they can get to be, absolute giants. But also, as we know, larger organisms, longer lived organisms are going to have more of those long-term effects, from that exposure to the
Uh,
oil.
they're going to accumulate a lot more. This actually a thing. There's a term for this called bioaccumulation,
Hmm.
where a single. I hope I got the right one because there's bioaccumulation as well. I always get the two mixed up. But basically, this is when a single organism builds up more and more toxins throughout their life just
Hmm.
by predating upon things that are.
Yep. Oh, and that actually reminds me, another important fishery, yellowfin tuna, and yes, mercury poisoning, also something that came to mind there. Of that's again a big, a big fish problem. Where it's the same kind of concept of.
Yeah. Apparently, that was pretty hard hit as well. The yellowfin tuna fishery,
Y-
from what I read.
Yeah, yeah, and that's such an important one, too. And it's so funny because, like, the population of the yellowfin tuna seems to have rebounded from what the little bits I hear from people up that way. But, like, if you ever go watch fishing videos for yellowfin tuna in the Gulf, 99.9% of the time they're fishing off of an oil rig.
Yeah. So you have a little bit more information about what followed, like some of the like legislation that was added in, right?
Well, so it wasn't legislation, but there was
Reports, things like
a
that.
it yeah, there was a conference that came together fairly soon after, because obviously, you know, almost as soon as the cleanup, efforts, started, you also had researchers, getting into things and starting their studies, because obviously this would, they would know that this would be a long-term, kind of study situation. So in January 2013, we had the first Gulf of Mexico oil spill and ecosystem science conference held in New Orleans. and they held this conference from 2013 up until 2020, which they had I think they had all been held up in New Orleans until the 2020 edition, which was held in Tampa, Florida. But then I assume that COVID probably ended the conference. Um, but if you go to the link, and we'll put it in the description of the YouTube video as well here, you can go through each year, and they have, I think, other than the first year, they have abstracts, as well as the schedule and everything that they, all the reports. Um, and program that they did, and this was you know a wide ranging conference with governmental agencies as well as NGOs, universities, other nonprofits. So this was the whole of government and the science or community coming together to share findings and network and do all of that. So if that's something that you're interested in reading more about, there's so much. Like, some of those PDFs are pages and pages long, but you can definitely spend some time going through there if that interests you.
I find that really interesting that something like this kind of brought a lot of different bodies together to discuss a problem and going forward. And so I couldn't quite find out like how oil drilling was banned in the Gulf of Mexico, but I do believe it was banned just before COVID. So,
Um, yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked it up. In Florida, it is banned. That was a constitutional amendment. Offshore drilling in Florida is banned, and it would take a 60% majority citizen vote to overturn that. So, and that's one where that one doesn't really matter political lines. That's a position that Floridians pretty strongly hold. Like, I think when that constitutional amendment was on the ballot, it passed with like 68 or 70% support, something like that. So Florida doesn't, but you do have oil wells, all the way from, Alabama all the way to the Mexican border with Texas.
so there was actually so they did when we started writing this, it did look like um they were gonna try and vote to actually allow oil drilling back. But since we started writing like our notes for this, I've actually seen news that they have decided to cancel the vote.
Mm.
Um, that
And that
would
could be for so many reasons, because not to get too much into the politics, but there's a lot of competing mini factions all over the legislature right now that is
yeah.
making it difficult for anything to get done, or for much to get done, I should say. Because yeah,
So I do believe the ban is part of the Endangered Species Act, if I'm not mistaken.
would
Uh,
make sense.
So yeah, I and we thought it was a good idea to just like bring that to everyone's attention. It's it's something that I don't think anyone that was aware of this will ever forget, but it's something that like kind of like the younger generation now might not be fully aware of everything that happened with this. So we thought it was a good idea to cover today, especially with especially when it's kind of been a little bit topical recently. Um, so do you have anything more to add?
No, I
Yeah.
think I'm good on that.
Okay. So we're gonna reach our lesser known species. Now the lesser known species segment today is gonna be a little bit longer because we're gonna be talking about something that we're gonna be doing next month. And by the time you see this podcast, actually, I say by the time you see this podcast, you'll see this podcast 3 days after we actually record it. So you'll see it quite soon. But by the time you see the lesser known species part, like we'll be really ramping up for something. And I also want to announce a video that's coming soon on the channel where I was fortunate enough to interview the Pied Piper from the Narwhal Pod and Sally from Games for Waves. And we were talking about how gaming can bring in a lot of money and attention to charity fundraisers. And that's kind of what we're going to lead into with our lesser known species today. So just a reminder, all the information that we have for lesser known species does come from the Whale and Dolphin Conservation website. And today we're talking about the northern bottlenose whale. Now, anyone from the UK would probably be like, oh, but this isn't lesser known. Like, we know these. This was the one that swam up the Thames. And you're not wrong. So, the northern bottlenose whales, they actually only live in the Atlantic, the North Atlantic. So, these whales were once heavily hunted for oil and for pet food during the 19th and 20th centuries. Over 65,000 of them were killed in whaling. And unfortunately, they are still hunted to this day. Now, unlike most beaked whales, these whales are very inquisitive. They're also one of the most well-known beaked whales. So, lesser known species is a well-known species of whale, beaked whale. Now, I think our next month's lesser known species I already have one in mind. I think it's going to be Dow's porpoise. The one of that, I don't know. Actually no. I think you did pick one out for me for July,
I
which
think so. I
which
don't
I'm
remember which one, but I think I did.
which I'm going to have to present live. So that's going to be fun.
Oh, that's r I don't know that I remember now. We did pick something because it will be a Pacific Northwest whale.
Yes. Oh, you said it's gonna. You've not actually told me the species. I think.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a Pacific Northwest whale.
Okay, you're gonna say You're gonna say offshore orca, and then I'm gonna
Yeah, we'll see.
curse you for that.
We'll see. We'll find
That's
out. I still got
not
time
much
to
information
decide.
then.
See, I got time to decide.
Yeah, you do.
It might be something out of left field.
Look, if it's offshore orcas, that would be like the dream to have a photo of that ready.
Mhm.
That would be like the first time they've ever come in water, inland water. So the northern bottlenose whales. So these are actually beaked whales, as I mentioned before, which means they're also toothed whales, and they are part of the family Xiphidae. So just a reminder, toothed whales. You've got 6 different families. You've got the porpoises, you've got the oceanic dolphins, you've got the river dolphins, you have the sperm whales, you have the beaked whales, and then you've got the monodons, which are basically narwhal and beluga. So these are wide ranging from the North Atlantic. So their range basically spreads from the east coast Atlantic to the west coast Atlantic. So from from Florida to France. Um, there are some northern bottlenose whales between me and Geo right this second. Probably,
That's possible.
it's possible. Oh, look, there's one that just swam past there, just in the middle somewhere. So, what do they prey on? They hunt squid mostly. but they can also eat herring, echinoderms, and prawns. Now, what are echinoderms? Geo might ask.
Actually,
Actually,
I know what they are because I've been getting into fossils.
it's also written on the page.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, I do know because yeah, they're starfish and similar because you also get the ones that are like that are kind of more like domed, that are like kind of puffed up. They're almost like a little biscuit.
Sea
And
cucumbers.
they're in yeah, and they're in like the same family, echinoderms.
Yeah.
That's
Did
that's a family that's been around for millions and millions of years.
did you know? Okay, fun fact about starfish. Did you know starfish are the only animal in the animal kingdom that have an odd number of legs?
Huh.
It's because they have radial symmetry. And I
Yeah.
think they're the only species of radial symmetry that have legs.
Yeah, whereas everything else is mirror symmetry.
Yeah. Even even if you look at even if you look at something like box jellyfish, they only have four tentacles,
Mhm.
but it's an
Hmm.
even number. Interesting that.
Yeah.
So to
Huh.
catch some of the deep sea squid, northern bottlenose whales can dive up to 1,400 meters and for 2 hours long. Now, this is pretty uncommon. Usually, their dives are about 15 meters and nowhere 15 meters, 15 minutes, and nowhere near as long as 1400 deep as 1,400 meters. That that was a mess of a sentence. This is what happens when we do it live. When I record videos, I can correct that in post. When we do the podcast, there's no correcting that.
You just get us.
Yeah, and often, like sometimes we'll go on a massive tangent where we're trying to explain the citation, and suddenly we'll end up on Star Trek. Most often, we'll end up on Star Trek. Let's be honest.
Something nerdy.
Yeah, I mean we are nerds. That's our other crossover.
So
So
how do you identify a northern bottlenose dolphin?
it's not a dolphin.
Oh, sorry, whale.
It's a
Sorry,
whale, northern
bottlenose
bone as
whale.
well.
You know, it's because all of my life it's been bottlenose dolphin. Like that's just
It's
at
a
least
Florida thing.
well, I guess I think it's just like, and I think it's also just like my generation, in America, it's just like when you think of a dolphin, you think of a bottlenose dolphin.
To be fair, and I think we'll throw it over to chat as well. When you think of whales and dolphins, a lot of people will think of maybe the same five will pop up all the time.
Mhm.
You'll have
Orca.
orca, bottlenose dolphin, blue whale, humpback whale, sperm whale. Those are, I would say, those are the five that everyone will think about. Maybe
And
there's
I would say the only two others that I think probably sneak in here and there for people would be belugas and narwhals.
for sure, for sure. Um, Now that's providing people realize that narwhals exist. Um,
Yeah, but the that meme song like from 15, 20 years ago informed a lot of millennials that narwhals actually exist.
we could do a whole podcast about how there's a crazy, like I don't want to use the word crazy. There's there's a silly, like, what's the best word? There's a very big amount of people that actually don't realize narwhals exist. And there's a lot of people that think narwhals are like fake, but no, they do exist. Um, so you asked how
Do
to
exist.
so you asked how to
Sorry, I just had
identify.
sorry, you triggered a vocal stim in me. There's a commercial. It's a Christmas commercial for M&Ms where the red and
Is
the
it
yellow M&M sneak up on Santa and the one like looks at him and goes, "He does exist," and faints, and then Santa goes, "They do exist," and he faints.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say like the purple M&M exists.
No, no, no. This is an older one. I think this was before the purple M&M. Like I think this was at this point when this one came out. I think it was just the red and the yellow, and I think they had just introduced the green
Ah,
character.
so so when we say about getting sidetracked, this is what
Yeah,
happens when we do this live. We end up on M&Ms. But you know what? Like you're watching a podcast like this. You watch a podcast for these moments, as much as for the information.
our other podcast is called Side Quests.
We should actually do that. We should actually do that podcast.
Good. We could get Phantom on for that. I think she would enjoy that.
Hang on. What day of the year is April 1st next year?
It's a good question.
It's it's
Eh,
a Thursday. Go figure. Go figure. It's a
Go figure.
Thursday when it could have been a Saturday.
Oh well. Maybe
Oh,
another time.
so you asked how to identify a narwhal. So you identify a narwhal because it's got one or two or zero. Oh wait, no, hang on. That's northern
Wrong
bottlenose whales.
species.
Yeah.
That's a well-known species. We're on lesser known species, Cravon.
Well, the lesser known is the double tusk narwhal.
Hmm.
I would let you viewers look that up. Also, put in the chat with the comments if someone asked you like what some species of whales and dolphins, what are the first ones that would come to your mind? So for northern bottlenose whales, the way to identify them is that they have a large melon forehead, and this is larger on mature males. Mature males also have small protruding teeth, which are very tough to see. Now, if you're wondering what a melon is, um, a melon is the organ that sits in front of the brain. It's the squishy bit. It a best example is picture a beluga. That's like you're picturing mostly melon there. So like belugas have massive melons.
A good way to think about it too is, melon for head, being a common colloquial term.
Or you could think about the thing that gives melon-headed whales their name.
Hmm.
Oh, I
They're
just
melon.
opened a can of worms there. Maybe that's a lesser known species we should do one day.
Hmm. Oh, there's also I got another lesser known species, but unfortunately it's a crustacean.
Is it also a whale?
No, it's a
Imagine.
crustacean, not a cetacean. Silly curvo. These are two different words.
Excuse me, but if you look through the evolutionary records, you'll realize that evolution has created crabs six
The
separate
14
times.
Yeah, 6 times, that's the number. Yeah, oh
So,
yeah, I know, crabs are the ultimate form of evolution.
so, well, let's be honest, crocodiles are 250 million years of evolution. They haven't changed one bit. So, but if I just
Yeah, but
picture one day like a whale's gonna turn into a crab. By the way, the term for that is carcinization.
mhm,
So, northern bottlenose whales they have a mix of darker colors on their back. So like grays, browns, things like that. And these are contrasted with lighter colors on their sides and bellies. Now, typically, when sea animals have this same coloration, and you see this a lot in sharks as well, where like the belly's white and then like the upper part is like darker. This is called counter shading, and the idea of this is when you're looking up, you're seeing the lighter side, so like the whiteness, and that's blending in with the surface of the water where there's the sun. And then from the top, you're looking down at a shark, and it's dark, and the background's dark as well because that's not where the light's coming from. So this is why this is a good form of camouflage. And for northern bottlenose whales, older individuals also tend to carry scars, and they also have flippers that can easily be tucked into their bodies whilst hunting. Now, let's talk about some of the threats facing northern bottlenose whales. So, one of the biggest threats is marine pollution, both from plastics and noise. And particularly with noise, you guys over in the UK might remember way back when there was actually a whale in the Thames. This was a beaked whale. This is a northern bottlenose whale. The skeleton of which is currently in the Natural History Museum. And one such reason why it might have been steered into the Thames could have been noise pollution. Now, unfortunately, another big threat towards the northern bottlenose whale is from whaling, which is ongoing, and specifically in the Faroe Islands. And in the Faroe Islands, they have this tradition where they'll go out and butcher a whole load of whales uh, for tradition, for no real reason. Um, so, speaking of whaling, this is actually going to kind of segue into us mentioning something that we're going to be doing next month, and our next podcast will be live recorded during that event, so you will see like a donation bar on the actual screen when we do that. But the podcast will actually air on YouTube after the event is already finished. So that's why we're mentioning it today. And there's going to be a few videos on the channel more about this. And this is going to be the World Ocean Day Festival with WDC. So what we're going to be doing is from the 4th to 11th of June, we're going to be supporting WDC to put an end to whaling in Norway. And this is going to be through multiple media forms, mostly Twitch, but also I'm going to be releasing, obviously, those videos over on YouTube as well. If you're a YouTube viewer, put in the description below. Well, write in the comments that you would like to participate as well, or even just donate towards this. If so, I will make a post on YouTube with the donation link. I think I'll do that anyway. So both me and Gio are going to be participating in this as well. We'll be recording the podcast, but we also have something else that's going to be very, very interesting that's whale and dolphin related. And that is a trivia night. So how that will work is that Gio will be asking me questions, and I think we're going to have a maximum of 15 questions. These are going to be difficult questions. Every question I get wrong, I have to donate £10. So that'll be interesting. That will be something that goes up on the Whale Talk podcast YouTube channel as well after the fact. So there'll be some extra whale content. So that's kind of like an extra mini podcast, if you will. So yeah, we're going to be supporting WDC in many different ways. And it's very important that we tackle whaling, because whales, aside from being very intelligent individuals, also have a very big environmental impact. So, Gio, you probably already knew this, but I'm going to ask you: Did you know? Actually, no, I'm going to ask. Out of all of the trees on Earth and out of all of the oceans, which locks up the most amount of carbon from the atmosphere? The oceans or the trees?
Um, Probably the oceans.
I mean, I'm posing the question, so obviously it's the oceans. Do you know why?
I would mostly go just from significantly more volume of space for that carbon sequestration.
So do you know where this carbon gets locked up? Like what locks it up?
That's a good question. I know that some of it is certainly large organisms, uh, eating smaller organisms, working up the food chain. But also, I know that some of it, because I kind of saw this a little bit when we talked about whale falls. What happens when a whale dies and falls to the bottom of the ocean, and that is a large carbon sequestration event because it will take a very, very long time for the carbon from that whale's carcass to make it back up to the surface of the ocean.
Actually, that's okay. That's. I didn't even think of whale falls. I'm gonna be honest, but that's actually a very very good point. So
And really, that would be with any large, whale falls, shark falls, you know, any kind of large, large organism that falls to the abyssal.
so the big thing that locks up carbon is actually phytoplankton. So
Ah,
phytoplankton will photosynthesize and they will convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. And so these require nutrients to propagate. And these nutrients usually come from uh, a mix of geographical features. Like if you got like different currents and like it's also topography that might impact this as well. But also when a whale, like a whale will go down, like diving, hunting, and when they're coming up, they're bringing nutrients back up with them, but also in their waste as well. This creates nutrients in the water, and this causes phytoplankton to propagate. So they're extremely important. This is what's referred to as the whale pump. So this is another reason why, like even for someone that's not so much interested in whales but more interested in the planet, this is why whales are vital to conserve. So also just quickly before we end, if you do want to take part in World Ocean Day as a content creator yourself, we'll put links in the description for like how you get in contact with WDC to do that. So, do you have any closing thoughts, Gia?
no, this has been a fun one. I've had a fun month, like to getting out into nature while we've had some really nice weather before the rainstorms start. But I figure I'm gonna keep going out through most of the summer, at least out to the beaches, if not to the river.
All right.
But I do hope that I will find a dugong rib. I'm thinking probably at some point over the summer I'll probably do a land site dig, somewhere, just because that would be a lot of fun to do.
I'm gonna be keeping an eye on the weather, so that I can get more practice with my camera for June and July. By the way, June's podcast is gonna be fun because I think June's podcast will have we'll have notes for the Dow porpoise, but other than that, I think our note sheet will be empty. Because June is going to be interesting. We're just going to be having a discussion about summer, really, like our summer
Yeah.
plans. So that's going to be fun and interesting. And honestly, don't know how long that podcast will be. But yeah, this has been a fun one. So um, I always forget the command, but thank you for joining me today, Gio, and thank you everyone for watching.
Yeah, I'll see you next month.
See you next month. I'll also check out next week's video. It's about Iberian orcas. Okay,
And last
bye.
week's video.
Yeah, all of the videos.